Hello everyone, how's it going? And welcome to this Wild Rift update video. Over the past few days, we've had updates from the developers from Wild Rift, but also from the official channels itself, kind of teasing us a little bit about what's to come in patch 5.2, some updates on Wild Rift console, and more. So in this video, I'm going to wrap up all the content and all the teasers and all the links that we've been able to get throughout the last couple of days and break them down myself and maybe give you a little glimpse of what's to come in patch 5.2. As you can see, patch 5.2 releases on July the 18th, so it's actually 1 month today, so about 4 weeks time. That means that we should get patch preview in about 2 weeks time. That's normally what happens. 2 weeks before the patch, we have the patch preview just to kind of hype people up for the new patch. But the social game of Wild Rift recently has been pretty top notch, I have to say. There's been a lot more interactive content on the social media for Wild Rift, and they've given us a little bit of a teaser already for what's to come in patch 5.2. You can see a picture here which looks like a T-Hex, and it says innovation has many different faces. Can you guess who this is coming to the new patch? And then the hashtag Hexrift, which is super interesting because when you originally look at this picture, as soon as I saw this picture, I was like, that's a T-Hex. How can I relate a T-Hex to something that's to do with a League of Legends champion and everything like that? And for those who know the lore of League of Legends and maybe knows the background of some champions, people will know that this is kind of similar to Heimerdinger's T-Hex. At first, I didn't really think this was a Gatling gun, but looking at it now, it does definitely look like a Gatling gun. He doesn't have his rocket launcher on his other hand. He now has an actual arm instead, which I think is super interesting. But then I kind of had a look at the rest of the image, because it's really interesting that they would leak Heimerdinger as kind of like this big T-Hex that's next to a tower, and also you have Scuttlecrab there. So then I was kind of thinking, I was like, maybe this is a type of objective because you have the Scuttlecrab here. Maybe this T-Hex is going to be an objective, maybe a dragon, or maybe the Rift Herald as well, maybe replacing Rift Herald, which is then what I thought about when it says, you know, hashtag Hexrift. We could be getting the Hextech dragon from PC League of Legends, because that is Hextech and it's hashtag Hexrift. But it's a cool teaser, I have to admit. I mean, it's got a lot of people asking questions about what this could be. I got a few things just to show you, just to kind of link what I'm talking about. This is the T-Hex, which looks very similar to the picture that you can see on here. Maybe a little bit upgraded, I have to admit. It's maybe not as weak as this, but this is the T-Hex from Legends of Runeterra, which, as I mentioned, is Heimerdinger's T-Hex, which is one of his innovations, or inventions, I should say, which is kind of what got people hyped. It's like, oh, Heimerdinger's coming out in patch 5.2, you know, they're teasing about the T-Hex, but Heimerdinger doesn't actually use this T-Hex in the game itself. He has his own turrets, he has a little bomb. So unless they're going to do like a huge massive rework on Heimerdinger, I don't think this was a teaser for Heimerdinger. But it is interesting that they're kind of going towards this Piltover route before Arcane even gets released, because Arcane's not releasing until November. So a lot of people were predicting that patch 5.2 would be something a little bit different. Then maybe patch 5.3 or even patch 5.4 could be something to do with Arcane, with the release of Arcane happening in November. But it seems like they're going a little bit ahead of the game in terms of this Hex Rift and kind of going towards more Piltover and so on, with the release of Arcane coming out later this year. So you can see there how everyone had the idea that maybe it was something to do with Heimerdinger because of the T-Hex. For those who played TFT as well, they remember the T-Hex from TFT, which was from a few sets ago. Again, looks very, very similar, but the big difference that I saw was that it didn't have the rocket launcher. It has the little Gatling gun. As you can see there, that looks like the Gatling gun, even though it looks more like a mace than anything else. But if you zoom in, you can kind of see it there. It has the Gatling gun. It has the same sort of T-Hex thing. So it's like, okay, maybe there is a possibility that this could be Heimerdinger. So I was kind of thinking, I was like, what could it be? There could be so many different possibilities. That's when I did kind of my own tweet, when I was like, loads of people were saying this is Heimerdinger's dragon, even though I meant to say T-Hex, but I just had dragon in my head. But where is the Gatling gun and the rockets? Because I didn't originally think that was a Gatling gun. And also his rocket is replaced by an arm now, which I think is interesting. And then I was like, I think this just confirms that we could be getting a Hextech dragon from PC League because it has the hashtag Hexrift. which is super interesting. And then it brings up a bunch of other questions as well, which I'll go into now in terms of the Hex Dragon. So this is the Hex Drake from PC League of Legends. As you know, with dragons on Wild Rift, and this is the same on PC League of Legends, there is a thing called Dragon Soul. And also, if the first dragon gets slain, then that turns into the Rift. The Rift kind of adapts to what the first dragon is. So if you have Infernal Dragon first, then the map becomes Infernal. All the flames get up and they basically ruin terrain. If it's Mountain Dragon first, then you have all these rocks that come up. Ocean Dragon, new bushes, etc., etc. Hex Drake works a little bit differently to that, which I'll explain in a second. But Hex Dragon in general is very, very similar to our Ice Dragon that we have at the moment, which, to be honest, I don't think has that much of effect in terms of the way that it changes the map. It just has like icy fields around the terrain, which is kind of boring, to be honest with you. I think the Hex Dragon Soul and also the way that it changes the Rift could also be super interesting. Yeah, that's just the Hex Dragon kind of there. Then you have the Hex Dragon Soul. Now, if you read Hex Dragon Soul, then you would think that this is Ice Dragon already, basically. Dealing damage to an enemy with a base attack or an ability, cause them to be struck by electricity, dealing true damage, and slowing them as well, decaying over 2 seconds. That's basically Ice Dragon. Bonus damage and slowing them. You get the little ice effect from Ice Dragon, and then they get slowed. This is basically the same effect as Ice Dragon, which I think is super interesting. And then if you go into how it will change the map, in PC League of Legends, they have these things called Hextech portals, which you can see here. If you look at this image might be a little bit too small. I might have to zoom in a little bit further so you can see that image. There we go. These are the little hex dragons around the hex portals around the rifts. So you have 2 in your base that you can go into the red side or the blue side of the jungle quicker, which is the same on the opposite side of the map. And then you have these hex portals behind the Rift Herald and the dragon, and then again go into the opposite side of the map. So what you do is you walk up to these hex portals, you click on them, and then when you click on them, you basically travel to that destination, which you can't be targeted or anything like that, which offers a new way of playing, I guess, League of Legends in a way. I'm not too sure how this would work on Wild Rift if this is their plan. Maybe they do a kind of different Hex Dragon Soul in a way. Maybe they do something else. I'm not really too sure. But if this is the case, and if we are getting the Hex Dragon to Wild Rift, then we're most likely going to be getting these portals as well, which means players are just going to be able to get out onto the Rift and into the lane and everything like that a lot quicker than what they can do at the moment. And you can already get onto the Rift super quickly, to be honest with you. I mean, there's so many ways in which you can get onto the Rift that you're super fast and everything as well. But yeah, these hex portals are super interesting. You can kind of see there, you just click on there, it channels for a few seconds, and then you travel to the other destination of the portal, which is kind of cool. So yeah, overall, I think that's what's going to happen. I think with the hashtag HexRift, I think that it kind of determines that we're going towards a more Piltover source of map or a Hex Rift. Then maybe they're changing the map and they're changing the way that we play the game, which I think is super great for the game. I think the further away that we get from League of Legends, the more popular Wild Rift will become. I think the problem is that Wild Rift is still very similar to League of Legends, and people are just saying at the moment, what's the point of me playing Wild Rift when I can just turn on my PC and play League of Legends and it's basically the same game? Obviously that changed in the most recent patch with the shadow items, which I think was a cool addition to the game. I think it just gave us a lot more, content, gave us a lot more ideas, and it was just a cool adaptation to kind of go towards different avenues of how to play Wild Rift. And maybe this is something else that they're trying new. Maybe they're changing the Rift and kind of the way that things work. Now, there has been more development on this tweet, especially by Skin Spotlights, which shout out to him as always for providing us with some more content and more behind the scenes look on what these teasers are. Obviously, if you don't know Skin Spotlights, he does like a lot of data mining and all this sort of stuff to actually get into the Wild Rift data, but also he does all the skins as well. So you've probably seen his name about. If you haven't already, make sure you give him a follow. But yeah, he tweeted, Wild Rift Sword PC let you ride Shelly, and was like, let's one up it. So Skin Spotlights has already kind of teased that this new T-Hex could be replacing Rift Herald, and also it could have the same riding Rift Herald effect as it does in PC League of Legends, which I think is super cool already. Like the kind of the idea behind that already is just getting me excited. You know, instead of Rift Herald, we get a T-Hex, we get to ride a T-Hex. I'm all down for that. That's pretty cool. But also he did his little data mining thing that he always does. And look at this. He has the battle tips, and he has Zero, which is obviously the champion, has claimed the T-Hex. So this pretty much confirms that the T-Hex is going to be replacing Rift Herald in patch 5.2. Because what happens when you claim a T-Hex is kind of similar to the way you claim the Rift Herald on PC League of Legends. So when you actually kill the Rift Herald in PC League of Legends, the eye of the Rift Herald spawns on the floor. And what you have to do, you have to walk up to it and claim the Rift Herald, which is kind of similar to this. Now, when you kill a dragon or a Rift Herald, it normally says Rift Herald has been slain, the dragon has been slain. But no, this is actually claiming the T-Hex. So you probably have to do something like kill the T-Hex at the Rift Herald location, kill that T-Hex, and then maybe it drops somewhere, maybe it goes somewhere, maybe you have to go and pick it up. It could be something very, very similar to that. So super interesting. I think this is really, really cool to see that, you know, we've got a little bit of a more interesting look as to what this T-Hex could actually be, which kind of goes away from maybe it's not Heimerdinger. I mean, Heimerdinger could be one of the champions since we are on a Hex Rift, and since the Rift Herald is being replaced by T-Hex, which is Heimerdinger's invention. So Heimerdinger could be a champion that still comes out in patch 5.2. But yeah, overall, super interesting. Really excited to see where in kind of what direction this goes and how this kind of affects the game as well. Which again, as I mentioned, you know, even if the way that they change the map and the way that they change the game, the further that they get away, I think the more popular the game will become, in my personal opinion. But you can see here, this is kind of what I was talking about with PC League of Legends. When you slay the Rift Herald, there's an eye of the Rift Herald that spawns. And then when you walk over this over a few seconds, then you claim the Rift Herald, which is kind of similar to claiming the T-Hex. So I think this is something that could be something very similar that we could be seeing on Wild Rift with the T-Hex. And then this is kind of the riding mechanic that you can see as well. I might have to zoom in a little bit. But basically the riding mechanic, basically what you do is you click on the Rift Herald and then you're able to select a direction. And what happens is that Rift Herald then charges in that direction. So instead of just plonking the Rift Herald down and the Rift Herald just AFKs towards the tower, you can actually direct the Rift Herald where you want to go to. And that means that you can direct it to try and take down towers, or you can try and direct it to maybe use the Rift Herald in another lane, maybe get to a lane quicker. So many different ways that you can see it. But yeah, another cool way in which this could be interesting. Again, all because of Skin Spotlight's tweet saying like, hey, PC League of Legends wants us to ride a Rift Herald. Wild Rift is now going to let us ride the T-Hex. You know, Wild Rift is kind of one up on that. So I think that's a super interesting way. I mean, let me know what you think of this down in the comments. Let me know what you think about the original tweet as well. Again, it's cool to see that there's like kind of teasers and bits of art and things like that that are coming out before the patch. We've never really had this before, to be fair. You know, like I said, in general, I think the social media for Wild Rift has been a lot more active. You can see just in terms of memes and other videos and content and things like that as well. There's been a lot of things that have been able to come out on social media, which I think is a good thing. You know, getting social media out there, allowing people to have a look at all of this cool art and things like that as well, which is pretty nice. So that's kind of part one. Then we get into part two, which is a tweet that we got from Papa Smoothie. If you don't know who Papa Smoothie is, he's the executive director, executive producer, sorry, not director, on Wild Rift. He's the guy that you see all the time in the patch previews. His name's David. You probably know him already. Again, it would be, you know, a person I've met before, Icons, super nice guy. He's been on Wild Rift now, I think, since the start, and he's been like promoted a few times as well. So he knows a lot about the game. He says, hopefully you can read this. I think this is zoomed in enough. I'll zoom in a little bit more. There have been a lot of questions about Wild Rift console's release, particularly with the recent updates from Valorant and 2XKO. So I wanted to officially let you all know that we're not pursuing a console launch at this moment. This was a deliberate decision to prioritize mobile investments over maintaining and trying to balance development between mobile and console. Our goal is to bring the right games to the right platforms for players. So while we see games like Valorant and 2XKO show up on console because of their existing popularity of those genres on the platform, we haven't been able to see that same with the MOBA genre. Splitting our development team focus from mobile and console wasn't a trade-off we felt like was right. This decision will allow us to remain focused on delivering new experiences, which is something I was just explaining with the kind of T-Hex thing, and expanding on the things you are currently enjoying for the mobile platform. We're excited about our plans for the rest of this year. Currently, we are looking into matchmaking, queue times, and game balance. Longer term, we are looking to address basic mobile experience such as login, download, and network stability. Thank you for supporting Wild Rift. See you on the Rift. So this basically confirms that we are not going to get console launch. I think that if they are not planning on releasing console launch anytime soon, I don't think we will ever get it, which is kind of sad because I feel like console launch maybe would have brought a different kind of audience, I guess, for Wild Rift in terms of, you know, popularity, especially in the West as well. In the Western audience, kind of outside of China, I guess you can say, consoles just in general are a lot bigger than mobile. You know, mobile games in the West are not as popular as most people know. It's very popular in like Southeast Asia, probably Brazil, you can say it's popular, China, you know, countries like that. Whereas if you talk about Europe and America, it's all to do with consoles and PC, which is kind of why Wild Rift is not popping off as much as something like PC League of Legends. So I think that they say that they're not pursuing a console launch at this moment pretty much confirms that they're just not going to do it at all. I don't think we're ever going to get console launch, unfortunately, for Wild Rift. Again, it's a bit sad, but I hope that the time and the effort that they could do on console launch actually goes into Wild Rift, because I think the kind of problem that we're seeing at the moment, maybe it's not a problem, we'll have to wait and see in the long term, but kind of the thing is like every single year they've been saying, oh, we've gone from 6 patches down to 5 patches a year. Last year they said, or this year, sorry, they said they're going from 5 patches down to 4 patches. So it's something that I was talking about on stream a little bit a few days ago, that there is not a lot of content regularly on Wild Rift at the moment. They're only bringing out 1 champion every single month, which is, to be honest, not that regular. It's kind of a long time between new champion releases, whereas before they were bringing out like 2 to 3 champions every single month, which I think was a good regular time to just bring more content to the game and make the game feel more fresh and more exciting. Whereas now we've only got 1 champion every single month. We've only got 4 major patches every single month, which means that we're getting a lot more minor patches, but they don't really change the game too much. The cool thing is that they're doing a lot of reworks to the game, which I think is super interesting. That definitely keeps it a bit more exciting in terms of how to play certain champions and how to play certain roles. But again, it's maybe a case of, I mean, I don't actually know, but maybe it's a case of they just don't have the fundings for the console launch. Obviously they'll need to hire a bunch of different people, and obviously with, you know, Riot announcing, I believe it was this year, was it this year? Yeah, earlier this year, that they've basically got rid of half the employees. No surprise really that there's no console launch. Again, I'm kind of sad about it because I think it'd be super interesting to kind of test out and get ahead of the game. But yeah, unfortunately not going to happen. Interesting that he does mention that they have, you know, current plans for matchmaking, queue times, and game balance. I think the queue times is mainly towards legendary queue because it's still just completely dead. No one plays legendary queue, so maybe that's something that they're trying to fix with that. Matchmaking, I mean, they always say matchmaking. I don't know what they could do about matchmaking, to be honest with you. I think, honestly, what I said here, would love to get your thoughts on potentially resetting everyone's rank and making everyone start from square one. I want this to happen so badly. There's so many problems with the current rank system, and there's so many problems with how easy it is to just climb in the game and get to master, and the game quality in higher elo, like master, even grandmaster, to be fair. Challenger is okay, but if you, I mean, Challenger and Sovereign, sorry, is okay, but like master and grandmaster, the game quality is just awful. Like, it's not fun to play, honestly. Like, the game quality is just extremely bad. Like, people don't even know the basics sometimes, which is really sad to see. But yeah, interesting to see what they do about matchmaking, also game balance as well, which is something that they've done quite decently recently, I would say. I mean, longer term is kind of boring stuff like login, download, and network stability. That doesn't really excite me at all. Honestly, login, I mean, the logins are fine. You could just use your Riot client. Download, I don't know what the hell they mean by that. And network stability, which is basically just to do with your own network. I've never had a problem with Wild Rift. I think it's just to do with people's individual network. So yeah, sad times, unfortunately, with the console launch not coming to Wild Rift. It's kind of a bit sad, but we also have a positive that we are going to be getting kind of this new T-Hex as a Rift Herald as well. But again, I wanted to give you all this update because I know a lot of you don't have social media. They don't really update that much in terms of the YouTube channel or anything like that. So I wanted to kind of give you all my thoughts, give you all a bit of the behind the scenes of what's kind of happening with the new patch. Again, the patch preview should be coming out in about 2 weeks time, and then the new patch comes out on July 18th. So we'll have to see. Again, the further they go away from PC League, the more that they come up with these new ideas, they innovate, they do all these awesome new updates, the more attracting the game will become, the more exciting the game will become, and the more popular it will become, because people actually find a reason to play Wild Rift rather than just playing PC League of Legends, because at the moment it's basically the same game. The only difference is some of the champions are different and the items, you know, there are some shadow items and radiant items. That's about it, to be fair. But yeah, as I mentioned, let me know what you think in the comments. I hopefully enjoyed this little update video. If you want me to do more of this, then let me know in the comments. But yeah, appreciate you all tuning into the video, appreciate you all listening and to me yapping for the past 20 minutes. Wasn't that long, to be fair. But yeah, appreciate you all. See you on the next one. Peace.